Did you know Canada now has more household debt than the entire country produces in a year? And that's not all. Experts warn that over 50% of Canadian mortgages will renew by 2026 at much higher interest rates, potentially doubling monthly payments for millions of families. The housing market is teetering, inflation is still biting, and more people than ever are struggling just to afford groceries. So, what's really happening to Canada's economy? On the surface, things may seem stable. But under the hood, cracks are forming, and fast. Economists, analysts, and even former Bank of Canada insiders are raising red flags. Yet, most Canadians have Northwest idea just how close we might be to a serious financial downturn. Could this be the calm before the storm? In this video, we're diving into 10 eye-opening reasons why Canada's economy is spiraling toward crisis, and what it means for your job, your home, and your future. Stay with us. Number 1. Housing market crash. For years, Canada's housing market has been on a wild ride, soaring prices, bidding wars, and a belief that property values would never go down. But that illusion is starting to fade. Home prices in many major cities have already dropped, and experts warn this could just be the beginning. The average Canadian home still costs nearly 7 times the average household income, far above what's considered affordable. As interest rates rise, more homeowners are finding themselves stuck with mortgages they can't afford, while potential buyers are completely priced out. What's making things worse is the wave of mortgage renewals coming in 2025 and 2026. People who locked in low interest rates during the pandemic are now facing much higher rates. In some cases, payments could jump by 40% or more overnight. That's a financial shock many households simply can't absorb. Add in rising property taxes and inflation, and owning a home in Canada has become more of a burden than a dream. Experts from RBC and CMHC have already noted signs of distress in the market, especially in suburbs where demand has dried up. This isn't just a real estate issue, it's an economic time bomb. The housing market makes up almost 10% of Canada's GDP, and a slowdown affects everything from construction jobs to consumer spending. When people feel poorer, because their home is worth less or their mortgage eats up their income, they spend less in the economy. That ripple effect can drag down growth nationwide. If home values continue to fall, we could see a massive wealth shock, especially for younger families who bought at the peak. And remember, when housing goes down in Canada, it doesn't just hurt homeowners, it hits the entire economy. Number 2. Crushing household debt. Canada isn't just one of the most indebted countries in the G7, it's among the most indebted in the entire world when it comes to households. The average Canadian now owes $1.85 for every dollar of disposable income. That means for every $1 you actually take home, you owe nearly $2. It's not just mortgages, either. Credit card balances, car loans, and personal lines of credit have all surged. And with rising interest rates, that debt is becoming more expensive to carry every single month. Here's where things get even more concerning. As the cost of living rises and wages stay relatively flat, people are turning to credit just to get by. That leads to a dangerous cycle: borrow to pay bills, then borrow more to pay off the interest. Delinquencies are already climbing, especially among younger Canadians. A recent Equifax report shows that missed payments on credit cards and auto loans have jumped significantly in 2025 compared to previous years. If this trend continues, we're looking at a potential personal debt crisis that could spill over into the broader economy. This level of household debt is not just a personal finance issue, it's a national vulnerability. When large portions of the population are forced to divert their income toward interest payments instead of spending on goods and services, the entire economy slows down. Businesses feel the hit, job growth stalls, and the country edges closer to recession. And if enough people begin to default on their loans, the banks themselves could face a credit crunch, tightening lending across the board. In short, Canada's reliance on cheap credit has built a fragile foundation, and now that the financial environment has shifted, that foundation is starting to crack. Number 3. Inflation isn't really gone. While headlines might claim that inflation is cooling, the reality on the ground feels very different. The core cost of living, things like groceries, rent, utilities, and transportation, is still painfully high. You've probably noticed it yourself. A grocery basket that cost $80 a few years ago now easily runs over $120. Even if inflation isn't rising as fast as before, prices haven't gone back down. This means Canadians are still spending more each month, but not earning more to match it. What's even more troubling is that wages haven't kept up with this inflation, leaving many households with shrinking purchasing power. People are being forced to cut back on essentials, delay major purchases, or take on more debt just to stay afloat. According to a recent StatsCan survey, nearly half of Canadians say they're worse off financially than they were a year ago, and the number is even higher for those under 40. This isn't just a temporary squeeze. It's a fundamental shift in how far your dollar stretches in everyday life. When people feel poorer, they spend less, save less, and invest less, and that slows down the economy at every level. Retail businesses see lower sales, restaurants struggle to stay open, and demand for services drops. On a national scale, this leads to reduced economic growth and rising financial anxiety. Even small price increases in critical areas like food and housing can have outsized effects because they hit everyone, not just investors or homeowners, but renters, students, and working families. So while the Bank of Canada might celebrate lower inflation numbers, the real-world impact tells a different story. For millions of Canadians, the cost of living crisis hasn't ended. It's just evolved into something more quietly damaging. Number 4. Interest rates are squeezing everyone. When the Bank of Canada raised interest rates to fight inflation, it triggered a ripple effect that's now hitting almost every corner of the economy. Mortgage payments have surged, especially for those with variable rate loans or anyone renewing after a fixed term. In some cases, Canadians are seeing their monthly payments increase by over $1,000, a financial shock few were prepared for. But it's not just homeowners feeling the squeeze. Businesses are also facing higher borrowing costs, which slows down investment, hiring, and expansion. Higher interest rates also make it much harder for people to access credit. That means fewer Canadians can qualify for mortgages, car loans, or even basic lines of credit. For small businesses, which often rely on loans to manage cash flow or fund operations, these rate hikes can be devastating. Some are being forced to downsize or close entirely. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business has already reported a spike in closures and bankruptcies in 2025, with many owners citing unaffordable borrowing costs as a key reason. And then there's the psychological impact. Rising rates don't just affect our wallets, they affect our confidence. People delay buying homes, avoid big purchases, and hesitate to invest or start new businesses. That hesitation feeds into a larger slowdown as demand across the economy weakens. Consumer confidence is already near historic woes, and this lack of optimism only deepens the economic slump. So while the Bank of Canada claims higher rates are necessary to cool the economy, the unintended consequence is that they may be chilling it too much, creating a cascade of financial pressure that hurts consumers, business owners, and the broader economy all at once. In short, interest rates aren't just a policy tool. They become a silent strain on everyday life. Number 5. Wages aren't keeping up. At a glance, it might seem like Canada's job market is holding steady, unemployment numbers aren't skyrocketing, and job postings are still visible across industries. But beneath the surface, there's a deeper problem. Wages simply aren't keeping up with the cost of living. While inflation has driven up prices for everything from housing to groceries, most workers have seen only modest increases in their pay, if any at all. That means even people who are fully employed are losing real purchasing power every month. This gap is particularly harsh for younger workers and those in lower-paying industries like retail, hospitality, and healthcare. A recent report from Statistics Canada shows that real wages adjusted for inflation, have actually declined over the past year. So, even if your paycheck looks the same on paper, it's buying you less than it did before. Combine that with rising interest rates, rent hikes, and food prices, and many Canadians feel like they're running on a treadmill, working just as hard, but getting nowhere financially. This disconnect between work and reward is starting to erode consumer morale. People are cutting back on non-essentials, canceling travel plans, and saving less for the future. That weakens economic growth even further because when people don't spend, businesses don't earn, and the cycle of slowdown continues. More importantly, this wage stagnation is damaging the long-term financial health of millions. It means fewer savings, delayed retirements, and more reliance on credit to survive. If Canada doesn't find a way to boost wages in line with inflation, the middle class, which has been the backbone of the economy for decades, could continue to shrink. And without a strong middle class, the economic foundation of the country becomes increasingly unstable. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about what's happening, and so do we. We pour hours into researching and crafting these videos so you get the full picture, not just headlines. So do us a small favor. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but helps us keep going. And drop a comment below. What's the biggest change you've felt in your own finances lately? Number 6. Global supply chains are still broken. Even though the pandemic officially ended years ago, its impact on global supply chains is still being felt, and Canada hasn't been spared. Many goods Canadians rely on, from electronics and vehicles to food and medical supplies, are still subject to delays, shortages, and price spikes. Adding global conflicts like the war in Ukraine and tensions in the Middle East, and international trade has become far less stable and predictable. For a country like Canada that imports a wide range of products, this translates into higher prices, lower availability, and ongoing uncertainty for both consumers and businesses. Canadian manufacturers and retailers are particularly vulnerable. When supply chains break down, they struggle to get the parts, products, or raw materials they need to operate smoothly. That leads to production delays, empty shelves, and increased costs, which are often passed directly on to consumers. For example, shortages in semiconductors continue to affect car dealerships across the country, driving up prices for both new and used vehicles. And it's not just about products. Supply chain issues have also impacted food imports, especially out-of-season produce and specialty goods, leading to more expensive grocery bills for the average family. All of this creates a ripple effect that slows down the entire economy. When businesses can't plan confidently or keep costs under control, they delay investments and hiring. When consumers face higher prices and limited choices, they spend less. The combination of weaker business activity and cautious consumer behavior becomes a drag on national growth. So while it might seem like supply chains are a global problem, they're having very real local consequences in Canada. And unless there's a dramatic improvement in global stability and logistics, this invisible economic pressure will continue to weigh on Canadian households and businesses alike. Number 7. Canada's productivity is falling. One of the most alarming yet least discussed issues in Canada's economy is the steady decline in productivity. Productivity measures how efficiently we turn resources, like time, labor, and capital, into goods and services. And right now, Canada is falling behind. According to recent data from the OECD and the Fraser Institute, Canada's productivity growth has not only slowed down. In some sectors, it's actually going backward. That means Canadian workers are producing less output per hour compared to their international peers, especially in countries like the United States and Germany. This decline matters more than most people realize. When productivity falls, so does economic growth. Companies make less money, pay lower wages, and invest less in expansion. In turn, that limits job creation and wage increases, which are already a problem in Canada. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. Low productivity leads to slower growth, and slower growth leads to less innovation and opportunity. What's even more concerning is that Canada's productivity has been lagging for over a decade, and no serious national strategy has been put in place to reverse the trend. Part of the problem is underinvestment in technology, research, and worker training. While other countries are rapidly adopting automation, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing, many Canadian businesses are still operating with outdated systems and processes. On top of that, regulatory red tape, fragmented provincial policies, and weak infrastructure slow down progress. If Canada doesn't address this now, it risks becoming less competitive on the global stage. And when a country's productivity collapses, it doesn't just affect businesses. It affects everyone, from students entering the workforce to retirees relying on public services. The future prosperity of Canada depends on getting this back on track before it's too late. Number 8. Over-reliance on real estate and oil. Canada's economy is dangerously dependent on just a few key sectors: real estate and natural resources, particularly oil and gas. While these industries have fueled much of the country's economic growth in recent decades, they've also created a fragile structure. When too much of a nation's wealth is tied to volatile markets like housing or oil, it becomes incredibly vulnerable to sudden shifts. And that's exactly what we're starting to see now. Real estate is slowing down, oil prices are fluctuating, and without strong alternatives, Canada is left exposed. Real estate alone accounts for nearly 10% of Canada's GDP, and when you add in all the related industries, construction, real estate services, home financing, the number gets even bigger. That means any slowdown in home sales, building permits, or mortgage activity sends shockwaves across the entire economy. Meanwhile, the oil and gas sector, heavily concentrated in provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan, remains highly sensitive to global market forces and environmental regulations. When oil prices drop or demand weakens, entire communities feel the impact, from job losses to government budget cuts. The deeper issue is that Canada hasn't diversified its economy fast enough. Other nations are investing aggressively in tech, green energy, advanced manufacturing, and biotech, but Canada has lagged behind. This lack of diversification means there are fewer safety nets when major sectors take a hit. It also limits opportunities for young workers, startups, and investors looking for innovation and growth. In times of global transition, whether it's toward clean energy or digital transformation, countries that adapt thrive, while those that cling to old models fall behind. Unless Canada makes a serious effort to broaden its economic base, its over-reliance on boom-and-bust sectors could lead to long-term stagnation. Number 9. Immigration is outpacing infrastructure. Canada has long prided itself on being a welcoming country for immigrants, and for good reason. Immigration fuels economic growth, fills labor shortages, and brings diversity and innovation. But in recent years, the pace of immigration has surged to record highs, with over 1.2 million newcomers arriving in 2023 alone, and similarly high numbers in 2024 and 2025. While this brings long-term benefits, it's putting immediate and intense pressure on infrastructure, especially housing, healthcare, and public transit, all of which are already stretched thin. The most visible strain is in the housing market. With demand far outpacing supply, prices and rents have soared in urban centers like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. This isn't just making it harder for newcomers to settle, it's also driving housing affordability further out of reach for many Canadian-born residents. Meanwhile, hospitals, schools, and transit systems are being pushed to their limits. Wait times in emergency rooms are climbing, classrooms are overcrowded, and public transit is operating beyond capacity in many cities. Simply put, the system was not scaled up fast enough to handle this surge in population. This mismatch between immigration levels and infrastructure readiness is creating social and economic tension. People are frustrated, services are strained, and governments are scrambling to respond. Instead of boosting growth, the situation risks fueling discontent and weakening public trust in immigration policy, even though the long-term benefits are clear. The problem isn't immigration itself, it's the lack of preparation. If Canada doesn't invest heavily and quickly in building more housing, expanding healthcare capacity, and modernizing infrastructure, the pressure will only grow. And when basic systems start to fail under pressure, the economy slows, public morale drops, and instability rises, a dangerous combination for any country. Number 10. Consumer confidence is crumbling. Perhaps the most subtle but dangerous sign of economic decline is the loss of consumer confidence. When people start to feel unsure about the future, whether it's their job security, rising costs, or the value of their investments, they stop spending. And that fear spreads quickly. In Canada, recent surveys show that more than half of Canadians are pessimistic about the economy, and many say they're delaying major purchases or cutting back on everyday expenses. This kind of pullback in spending doesn't just reflect anxiety, it actively slows down the economy. Consumer confidence plays a massive role in keeping the economy alive. When people feel secure, they buy homes, dine out, take vacations, and invest in their futures. But when confidence collapses, people tighten their budgets, avoid risk, and wait things out. That means businesses earn less, cut staff, and invest less in growth. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. Fear leads to less spending, which leads to job losses, which fuels even more fear. And right now, that cycle is beginning to take hold in many parts of the country. What's especially worrying is that this collapse in confidence isn't based on one issue. It's the result of multiple economic pressures piling up at once. High debt, expensive housing, stagnant wages, and rising interest rates all contribute to a general feeling of instability. And when people lose faith in the economy, they also start to lose trust in political leadership and institutions. That kind of erosion doesn't just affect the markets. It can lead to long-term damage in how society functions. A confident population is the engine of any strong economy. But when that confidence fades, even the most stable systems can start to unravel faster than anyone expects. Canada's economy isn't collapsing overnight, but the signs are becoming too loud to ignore. From a housing market on the brink, to crushing debt loads, stagnant wages, and a fragile over-reliance on real estate and oil, the foundations are under stress. Add in broken supply chains, declining productivity, and infrastructure that can't keep up with population growth, and it becomes clear this isn't just a temporary slowdown. It's a system that's being tested from all sides. But here's the truth. Economic downturns don't affect everyone equally. The people who pay attention, who prepare early, who understand what's coming, are the ones who come out stronger. This video wasn't made to scare you. It was made to inform you, to help you connect the dots before it's too late. Because the more you understand what's happening, the better decisions you can make for your money, your family, and your future. We've just unpacked 10 powerful reasons why Canada's economy is at risk, but this conversation doesn't stop here. What do you think? Are you already seeing signs of the slowdown in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective could help someone else prepare too. We put an incredible amount of research and effort into bringing you videos like this, so if you found value here, please support us by subscribing. It takes just one click, but it means the world to our team. And if you're serious about protecting your future, don't stop now. Check out our other videos for deeper insights. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay one step ahead.